So one method that we can use to measure GDP is the expenditure approach, which focuses on the spending side of the economy. Here, the four main actors that we consider are households, firms, government, and foreigners. Based on the expenditure approach, the first component of GDP that we will look at is private consumption. Now, private consumption includes individuals' expenditures for all goods and services, excluding the purchase of new residential housing, as this is something which does not go under consumption, but rather is included under investment. So this brings us to the second component of private investment. Now, there are two subcomponents of this. The first is private fixed investment, which, as we mentioned, includes individuals' purchase of new residential housing. Other than that, this includes capital formation by firms that adds production value, which includes machinery, equipment, factories. And over here, something to note is that if you have, for instance, say a purchase of a car, right? So that same thing could be under consumption if it was purchased by a household. But that purchase of a car, if it was by a firm that was meant to add production value, it was a part of the business, so then that would be included under private fixed investment. Under investment, you also can have inventory investment because firms don't sell everything that they produce during a period. So whatever they don't sell, that counts as inventory, which also goes under investment. So the third component of GDP is going to be government purchases. Now, this will exclude any purchases that don't add production value, which means that we will exclude transfer payments like unemployment benefits, social security, food stamps, because these don't correspond to the purchase of any goods and services. So we will not include them as a part of government purchases when computing GDP. The last component of GDP is net exports, which is the value of exports minus the value of imports. Now here we add exports because they represent foreigners' demand for a domestic output. But we need to subtract imports as well, because when we talk about consumption, this consumption would include consumption of domestic goods plus consumption of imported goods. Similarly, when we talk about investment, this will be related to investment related to domestic output and investment on imported items. Then similarly, government purchases would also include government purchases of domestic output and government purchases of imported items. So that's why in net exports, we need to subtract the value of imports to make sure that we are only taking into account domestic expenditure. So these are the four components of GDP based on the expenditure approach.